So this one is pushed too far, pulled too far this way. So it might be nice to actually install this piece first and then use this to bump into it. I would definitely do that. If I was to do this bumper again, I would put this piece in first. Actually put my fingernail in it right here where it's sticking over just a little bit and pull back on it. And that will even help release and move the material that way just a little bit. Perfect. That's gonna be a great seam there. All right, terrific. So we're gonna go ahead and install paint protection film on this black part of the bumper here. So this is the bulk of the front basically. And this piece does have a relief cut in here somewhere, and then a relief cut in here, because it's gonna be almost impossible to get this film. I mean, don't get me wrong, you could get it, but if this was all one piece, you'd have a really difficult time laying into this recess here without leaving air and water behind it. Then eventually the water will dry into air pockets. And then in here, really difficult area to work with the material in there. And especially on black, it would just be a nightmare. So they went ahead and did a relief cut in there, which is really necessary to get that to conform down in there. And then there's a piece that goes here in the center. So we'll install this part first, and then we will install this second piece here. And this does wrap all the way up into this area here. So let's go ahead and get this wet down and get started. All right, so just remember when you're pulling all this stuff off that we need to have this prepped correctly. So we need to lift this up here and wet all this down. And it's not so much this part as it is this part, because when we start pulling this way, it'll tear on that line. It'll tear right in there. And then let's look for other areas. So this area needs to get wet down because it's gonna want to catch right here. This should all be fine. Now we need to get this part here. And then pulling that around, and then we'll need to get this whole part peeled up because it's going to want to catch right here. Great. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and get this laid on. Okay. So the one side does have the cutout around the parking sensor, and then this side does not. So one thing I don't particularly like about the way that the Core software cuts out kits is that it will not finish one part of the kit before moving on to the next part. And so the problem with that is that our plotter cutter was having some issues with the blade depth, which adds extra drag to the material, and it started going offline a little bit. Basically, instead of rolling straight through back and forth, it tilted a little bit or twisted, and then it was rolling off a little bit. So it cut everything out, cut that circle out, and then it cut out all the other rest of the little pieces for this kit, which was a lot of pieces. I don't know how many exactly, but it was a lot. At least 10, minimum 10 pieces. And then it decided it was gonna cut out that circle on the other side, and I just couldn't let it do that because I was like, if that thing's off just by, you know, 1/4 of an inch, it's gonna be a disaster. So I went ahead and just held the blade up so it couldn't cut that part, or paused it basically, and didn't allow it to cut that. So we'll go ahead and get to that, but I'm hoping that maybe someday they'll fix that in there. It'd be nice to have it cut out each individual piece of the kit before it moves on to other little pieces. All right, let's go ahead and start getting this into place and squeegeeing it out. All right, and I think, let's see, normally I'll start like in an area like this here, so let's go ahead and just do that and see how that goes. You know, there are instructions in there as far as the, do you remember where it said to start, Heather? Okay, well, Oh, okay, it wants you to start in the middle. That does kind of make sense, because you do need to kind of line this up, because you need to make sure that these little parts that connect the pieces are correctly aligned. So what I'm doing now is just making sure that we've got things lined up. So let's go ahead and see if we can get rid of, not really. Okay, I was trying to get some of that air out, see if that would just lay down into place, but it really won't. Okay, so we've got that thing lined up around the parking sensor, and then we're just getting the rest of this lined up. And that is looking really good. So we're lined up good on all these parts. We're lined up good here. Make sure that you're up high enough. Seems kind of like a little bit too much coverage there, but it's definitely something we can work with. It's hanging over a little far and then going up a little close. I mean, that could have a little more space and that would be fine, but we'll see how all this goes. Okay, great. So seems like it's all lining up really well. So let's go ahead. I'm just gonna basically tack all this area down, and then we'll go ahead and start squeegeeing it all out. Okay. So let's go ahead and squeegee this out. All right, so a friend of mine just showed up and he's talking to me. So we've got to go ahead and do a little voiceover through this portion, and then it'll take about 7 minutes, and then we'll get right back to me explaining this, as well as I did record both sides, so the other side has me explaining this without interruptions. So right now we're squeegeeing this slopey water up over that top edge, and then this material does go up over that edge and then wrap across the top. And so it's just important that when you're squeegeeing this out that you're paying really good attention and you're getting everything off of that corner, because it's very easy to leave moisture in there, and then when that moisture dries it'll leave silver air pockets. You can see that we've still got a couple fingers there that are being a little bit stubborn, and we'll go ahead and continue to work on this until those are down. Also back in there is the supports for the rest of the bumper, like the next fin or whatever you'd call that thing up above my fingers right there. And so those supports, the material's working around those supports, so it does take a little bit of effort to squeegee out the water around those supports as well. Alright, let's go ahead and start squeegeeing out this next section. We're going to go up into this recess here. Pull this back, get rid of some pre-tacking, and then we'll go ahead and start squeegeeing this out. Now right there at the end of that relief cut where I'm reaching up and putting my finger, eventually we're going to need some tack solution in there, because this just is not staying down at all. And it's important that you get the end of those relief cuts to tack down really well, because if we do need to do a little stretching around that area, like when we stretch that top part into place, we don't want to stretch a little finger into the end of that relief cut, because those fingers are very difficult to get to go away. Alright, well, let's find the tack solution. There it is. Let's get it in that part like I was saying, and then we can squeegee that out and hold it with our finger and get it to stick down really well. Little mist on top, so the squeegee will glide nicely. I went ahead and grabbed my red squeegee here, which is it conforms a bit better, so that we can get into that recess there a little bit better and make sure that we're getting everything squeegeed out really well. Alright, this part's being a little stubborn as well. I think we're going to need to put a little bit of tack solution in there as well, and re-squeegee this back down. And apparently I'm just going to squeegee over all these parts like a ton of times. That's one of the supports there that I'm fighting with right there. So I'm really just trying to get that material to go down to that, right next to it, and stay stuck down. All right, so let's get in this second little piece here that is on the top of the relief cut. And so right there on that very corner, just to the left of my fingers, there's a little notch in the material, a little V shape. And that V shape needs to end up, needs to line up right on the corner of that piece. And then what we'll go ahead and do is squeegee this out across the top of it so that it locks it down into place. So my finger actually right there is locking that very corner down into place when I was pushing on it there. Now I'm checking my alignment to make sure we're not hanging over the top, and we'll squeegee this out. And now we'll go ahead and roll this over the front of this little part, and then we'll have to roll the little left piece over as well. Okay, just double checking everything, making sure it's sticking down really well. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to this bottom section. We're going to pull all this back, make sure that we don't have any pre-tacking, and then we just want to be really careful not to pull back to our seam up there where that relief cut is, because we don't need that coming back up. Looks like we're going to need just a little bit of tension in this corner here in order to get that top corner to lay down a little bit nicer, and we'll be able to squeegee those fingers out without any problem. So I'm just checking for alignment here. Alright, and then we'll go ahead and start squeegeeing this out. Eventually, I'm guessing we'll probably need a little bit of tack solution in those fingers to get them to stay all the way down. Looks like I'm dealing with a little bit of an alignment issue there, so went ahead and pull that back up, and we'll realign and then squeegee this all back out again. Yeah, there we go. I don't know why I'm messing with that so much. It must be because I'm talking to somebody else that I'm not really giving this my full attention. But that definitely was going to need some tack solution in there with the way those fingers just kept popping back up. They were big enough, they were going to need some tack. Okay, just getting that good and squeegeed out, double checking everything, making sure we're not leaving anything behind. And right there, I'm squeegeeing all that out at the bottom there because there is a piece of material that's going to be bumping up into that as well. Alright, so I'm stretching the material and lining it up. I'm getting it right down into that corner there. And then I'm double checking to see what I'm going to need to do as far as bringing it forward to kind of help get rid of some of these fingers. Let's go ahead and get rid of some of that air pocket. Make sure that we're lining up really well. And the more important spot was where my left thumb was. That was more important to get lined up really well for starters. And then we get this squeegeed out, and then we'll work over towards my to my left hand. All right, let's go ahead and start talking about what we're doing again. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add a little tack in here. See if we can get all this to go down. It's like make that wrap around a little. And I want to put a little tug on this just to help get rid of some of this finger here. Something like that looks really good. And then we'll go ahead and take that down. We want to break that finger up a bit, so we don't want to push everything down around it until this is going down. Because see how it moved over there now? We really want to try and break that up. Great. Okay, and then this one here, let's go ahead and put a little tack on here. And then what we can do with this one is push it down, see how well it stays. What we can do is swipe and hold on this edge, just like that. And then let's get a little bit of tack underneath these little edges here. So that is just barely bumping into this edge here. So I might have to do a tiny bit of trimming them off just a tiny bit on my placement here. Oh, and it actually went down in between. It rounded that edge just a little bit. We'll see if that stays down though. I kind of question that, whether that's gonna work or not. Okay, and I did end up with a little bit of a distortion here, where I let this sit because we squeegeed this part out and I let this sit, and then I did do a little bit of pulling. So I'll see if that distortion stays. A lot of times those will soften up and be a lot lighter once they dry, because it's very dry here and it's super wet right here. So a lot of times those will kind of go away and dissipate a bit. We will see if that's the case or not. All right, let's get some slip solution in here, make sure nothing's pre-tacking, and then let's see what we can do about this now. So that actually looks like it's going to lay down quite well. It does, I don't know, it looks like, I guess that's good right there. Okay, well, let's see what we can do then. Let's get some of this tack in here. Some of these areas are going to go down quite well, and we need to get rid of this air pocket, which is going to produce a little bit of extra material as well, but hopefully that just goes down nicely into that recess, which it did. Great. Okay, and then let's go ahead and push this down, and I will make sure to completely record the other side so that you know, we didn't miss anything. A friend of mine showed up and I was like, well, we have two sides of the bumper, right? You can watch me put on one side and I'll talk about the other side. Okay, so that is a pretty deep little recess right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and just let that continue to be popped up like that. And then let's see what we can do here. So we need to get some tack solution in here. And I really like this red squeegee for these type of areas because it contours really well into them. I mean, that's working out great. The black squeegee tends to be a little rigid in areas like this, and that's where this type of squeegee, this firmness, really, you know, really performs really well. Okay, so I'm getting most of this kind of laid down into place with some slip solution, and then we're adding some tack to get certain things to stay down. Okay. So we really want this part here to stay down. So I'm going to hold that down in place. And by holding that down in place, it gave it a little bit more time to cure and stay stuck down. And so now what we need to do is make sure we're up high enough so that we're not hanging over this bottom edge. So I want to bring it up just a tiny bit. And then that looks really good right there. And that looks like it's all laying down very nicely. And we did pop up again right there, so we'll get back to that. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring all of this moisture out. You know, by putting my finger on it and moving my finger like that and kind of budging this material, fudging it to go up a little, I did leave a little distortion right there in the adhesive. So just keep that in mind when you're on black. You have to be really gentle. It's nothing, it's extremely minor. If I really wanted to make it go away after it dries, if it doesn't pretty much completely go away as it dries, then I'll take one of these bone sticks and massage it and it'll completely disappear. All right, so I'm just trying to get a little bit of tack in these edges, and we'll go ahead and push this up a little bit more and make sure we're not hanging off this bottom. And let's go ahead and squeegee this out. Great. Okay, so let's get a little more tack in this and see if we can get this to stay down. I think there wasn't much tack in it because I think that should have stayed down already. So it must have just been slipping there. Just allowing it to pop back up. Okay, and then let's get this whole edge down with some tack. That way when we put this center piece in and we bump into this part doesn't want to continually pop up. I mean, it actually might be just a little while, but we'll also want to put tack on the other side as well once we get that down. All right, let's go ahead and get this piece into place. We've got a little finger popping up right here. Okay. All right, everything's looking really good. Now let's get this into place. So my thoughts on this piece are just that there is going to be a gap here. It's just the way it's going to be. And you can try to minimize it by bringing it in a little bit closer, but the last thing you want to do is get this stuff really bumping into itself here, because that's just going to make a bigger mess. All right, so don't get too crazy. We're just, we just do what we can in these areas. Okay, great. And then let's go ahead and get that part out. Just make sure we got this contour squeeged out really well. Yeah, and the seam there doesn't really line up that well. And, that would be something that would really need to be like super crafted to get that to line up. And I'm not even sure how that would work for everybody. But I do feel like that is adequate coverage for what we're working with here in that area. So I wouldn't really complain about that at all, other than just to acknowledge that it's a difficult area, and it comes out pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. Okay, so we're just trying to get this, squeegee this edge out here. Okay, fantastic. All right, and while we're right here, let's try just one more time in here and see what we can get to go down. I have a feeling not much, but let's see. That actually went down quite a bit more than I thought it was going to. So that's good. Okay, and the rest of that we can just let sit there and cure, and then we'll put some heat on that and push it right on down. Great, let's get on over to the other side. This is starting to pop up here again, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up a little, see if I could sneak some tack underneath there, and we'll go ahead and push this down. Great. Little finger here, let's get rid of that guy. He just keeps coming back. Let me see, there's something on the very edge right there. I don't know if it's a nick in the plastic or if it's something stuck to the adhesive there. Okay, whatever it is, I just got it out with the squeegee by kind of just working that edge. I got whatever it was to pop off of there. Perfect. Great. Okay, let's get over to the other side and see if we can get some more explanation. We'll get some more explanation and closer shots on the other side. Now first things first, we need to pull all this back and wet all this material back down because we were over on that other side for a little bit. And this is definitely going to have plenty of pre-tacking. Now I don't want to just pull on this right here because it could tear right there. And even if it doesn't tear, you could overstretch the material right there and damage it. Okay, so right back to there. Great. Now let's go ahead and lay this back down into place. Okay, and then it looked like we have a couple little water pockets right down in here, so I went ahead and pulled that back up so that we got some more moisture in there. We can just push those out now. Okay, so this side will be a little bit different than the other side. So that's where we need to be, and we do have a little bit of extra material here in order to keep this part from hanging over that edge. So let's see what we can work with here with like placement with this right here. So we need this area to stay stuck down, and then we're going to get rid of that throughout this area. I'll show you how we're going to do that. So right there looks really good. We'll go ahead and squeegee this out. Okay, let's leave that alone now, and then we'll start moving this finger around here. So I'm trying to kind of split that finger up. I want some of it there, I want some of it here, and we're just gonna break that up a little bit. Okay. So I've got some of the finger there, some of it here. Let's see what we can do with that, and at least get it down to like here somewhere. And I will go ahead and put a little bit of tack in here, so that once we get this part into place, it's not moving around on us. So I feel like we took too much of the finger that way, so I definitely want to bring some of it back. And this is basically a way that you can kind of shrink the material down to get it to fit into something if you know, or if it's too long, and that's what we're dealing with right now. Now potentially over here on this other side, I could have moved the whole pattern that way if I had completely pushed this down around this first, but I didn't do that, did I? It's too little too late for that. Okay, so I basically got in the middle of those fingers and then pushed it up and then brought it down. And we are shrinking that material up into this spot here. Okay, let's get it up over that edge, and then we'll do a swipe and hold on the edge. And then let's see if we can get that to go all the way down. There's a lot of moisture in there, so I'm not sure that that's actually going to stick right now, but we'll worry about that later. We're not super concerned with that. Okay, great. So now let's start working over here. So I've got some here, and some here. And that's looking pretty good. So I like how we've got this position. So let's go ahead and lift this bottom up a little. Get a little tack solution in there. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead, and what I would like to do is get this line kind of squeegeed out as much as it will, so that something is tacking in place a little bit. And then we'll go ahead and take the rest of this downward And then we want to get that air pushed out right away so it doesn't start leaving any type of a distortion or air pockets in the adhesive right there underneath the material. Okay, so right there I had a little bit of air in here. You can still see a tiny bit of white there. And so I'm trying to put some good pressure on that and get that stuff squeegeed out, and that will just dry up and go away. That's not going to be an issue. Let's go ahead and try to get this back down again. Interesting that it didn't want to stay down. I mean, normally when I do a swipe and hold on an edge like that, there must be a lot of slip solution still in that area. Let's get that filled in with some more tack. Swipe and hold on that, and then we'll get this stuff kind of pushed down over the top here. Okay, so we're gone back about halfway there. Let's go ahead and see if we can get the rest of this down now. So it does kind of appear that it would have been better to start right here in the middle and make sure this was perfectly aligned from left to right so that we didn't have too much material like we just had right there. So I could see why they want you to start in the middle there, and that does kind of make sense. Okay, now we want to make sure that we get all this stuff squeegeed out really well, so we're not leaving any moisture behind in this edge here or across the top there. Let's go ahead and get some tack solution on that edge where we can, and we'll go ahead and push this down. We also, let's get this part down right now as well, because these little guys should be staying down on this edge because we can do a swipe and hold on them. Great. Okay, now let's get this part down, and I think I'm going to switch over to this squeegee here because it's a lot more rigid. So it's going to get a lot better pressure on this. And this material is seemingly going over the edge. No, I don't know that it is. I need to get a light in order to know for sure. But it's still popping up on that edge. So let's see if we can dry that out. So I'm gonna go ahead and bump the edge. And it just keeps popping up, so I'm just gonna allow that to happen. It's just a minor little finger right there. I'm gonna move on for now. And we'll get the rest of this down. Oh, so we've got some water right here. Just went and push that down and out. It must have come from the top part here. Okay. It's very dark back in there, so it's really hard to see what's going on. So a good thing for that would be a flashlight. I mean, even with all the light I have in here, it's still, like, I can barely see these fingers back here popping up because they're a little bit silver. Okay, now those are all pushed down. Great, let's keep moving over to here. I did leave a little water right here. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get rid of that now. Okay, I was able to just drag that through real quick. We obviously didn't use a ton of tack in here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and lift this up to make sure that this isn't pre-tacking, and we'll go ahead and throw some tack solution in there, and then let's get this in there. So we want to make sure this edge is really pushed down. Oops, I trapped some moisture in there. Let's get this back up real quickly here. There we go, perfect. This material kind of flipped over on itself, so let's get that up. Great, okay. Okay, I'm gonna go grab a flashlight. We can take one look in here, make sure everything has been pushed down and out correctly, and then we'll be able to move on. Ooh, it's still red. That's not good. That's been overnight. Not good. Okay, so it's bumping into this part here just a little bit. Which is a bummer. I guess we could have come down just a sliver right there, I guess. See how that looks now. Okay, maybe better. It's hard to tell with so much moisture in there. This is definitely hanging over that back a little bit, and there's going to be nothing we can do about that. I think it could be used to be a little bit shorter back there, would be beneficial to the install. Okay, so everything looks like we did get it pushed out really good. Let's keep moving on. So we don't have this to tell us where to line up this time. That was pretty much a no-brainer last time that we needed that to line up. So we don't really have that this time to help us. Let's go ahead and see what we can do now without that. So right about there looks good. That all looks good. Okay, so I think we're gonna be good in this space right about here. Let's go ahead and squeegee this out. Okay, I'll go ahead and pause right there. Okay, let's see how this looks. I think what we had to do over on the other side was pull this a little bit more forward. So let's go ahead and lift this up just a tiny bit so we don't tack too much of that down before we're ready. And let's go ahead and at least get tacked down over this top edge right here. Okay, so start down plenty low, because we don't want to leave anything that could have ran back down in here. Great. Okay. And we'll go ahead and throw some slip in here. And we'll deal with this area in a couple minutes. Okay, so it looks like we could put a little bit of stretch right here, and that'll really help all that stuff lay down nicely. So that looks really good like that. And then these fingers really, we need to kind of just go straight back with them in order to get those to push out as well as they're going to. If we just kept doing like this, we were going to cram them all into this one corner and then try to make them go away, and that was going to be a bunch more work. Okay, so a little tack in there and those push right down. Great. Now let's get this bottom part here lined up really well. So this part does go over this little edge right here and go into this recess a little. So we want to make sure all this is looking really good and lined up. And then this part could come back just a tiny bit. And if yep, okay, just push it back and put a little pressure on it with my thumb. And then that wants to stay down now, or stay into place. Okay, and when I'm pushing my fingers on it, normally I'm not putting a ton of pressure. I'm just kind of holding it in place, but not really putting a lot of pressure on it. Just very lightly, and then you're hoping that adhesive starts to grab a little and then it won't move back once you let go. If it does move back once you let go, then you're probably gonna need a little tack in there. All right, let's get rid of some of this here. Bring this down a little bit, and then we'll work on getting rid of some of this finger. Some of that's gonna need to come this way and break up along this bottom, but we do need to get rid of this whole air pocket here, and this red squeegee works great for that. Just contours right in there. I don't know about you guys, but man, do I love it. Oh, you're not paying attention. All right, let's put that back in there, because that's like one of my favorite things. I don't know why, it just is. Okay. So when you have something like this, a recess like that, I don't know what it is about it, but when I'm using a squeegee like this, and I can just come in and squeegee that whole area out, there's just something about that. I really enjoy squeegeeing that kind of an area out. All right, let's go ahead and take this all the way down. We're lining up really good here, and that means that we're gonna need a little bit of stretch down in order to get rid of some of this finger here. So let's go ahead and take this the rest of the way down and see how that works. And we'll need to get some of this down here and around this edge. We don't want to get too crazy out here though, because we've got some other things to work with down there. So let's go ahead, get a little tack in this corner here. And then really the way that I would like to handle this would be to pull down on this and hold it like this. But you want to make sure that you're not, that you're lining up good on that corner. Okay, great. Okay, I'm gonna get some tack in here, or some slip in there. Make sure that doesn't start tacking up. And then we're gonna get some tack in these parts and get these pushed out real quick before we start leaving any, anything in the adhesive or anything once we push this out, or any distortion lines as they start to cure. These things need to be pushed out right now. Great. While we're right here, I'm just looking at this and it's bugging me. So let's get these little fingers out. We just want to do a swipe and hold on these. Great. Okay. And we did have a finger come back right here. So swipe and hold on that. Okay, so now we need to get this whole area down. So I did add some slip in there. Let's add a little more. Just make sure we're not getting any pre-tacking. Okay, so that is going to lay in very nicely, just like that. So with this, like one pass or a couple passes on the squeegee, that's going to go right on down. Those areas, I just love squeegeeing those with those, just this like compound curves. Okay, let's make sure we've got everything squeegeed out of here. All the air and water is out. Okay, and then actually I'm going to put a little bit of tack in here because this, every time I bump this edge, it just keeps wanting to kind of come back up. Okay, then we'll hold that down for a second. Great. Okay. All right, now let's get this piece into place here. Looks like we are just a tad too high. Although I don't know if there's anything we can really do about that, but let's try putting just a little tack in there and seeing if we can get this to stretch down a little and then stay in place. And I mean just a little, because not much. And we don't really want a bunch of tension on this part right here. Okay, I was able to get that, just sneak it down just the tiniest bit. And that's gonna help us not bump into that top edge there. So let's get rid of all that now. Let's take this part all the way down. Great, I'm just going over it a couple times to make sure I've got everything pushed out of there. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and get this into place. I'll add a little bit of tack in there. And then we'll go ahead, lift this back up. That creates a little finger, but that finger is going to be very manageable, very easy to work with. Okay, and we'll go ahead and squeegee this out, make sure it's not moving at all and it's still lined up correctly. Okay, great, and let's take this up now. Well, and actually we'll come across this whole part here first, and we'll take this whole top part up. And then right here, I would figure that we're going to need some tack solution in all this area to get this to stay down. Because you can see it's kind of got some extra material there that's kind of bunching up in this area, so I would expect that that wouldn't want to just stay down super easy. Okay, and we'll push this little finger down. Okay. Just kind of running smashing my finger into this recess and trying to push out some more of this moisture that's in this portion here. Okay, great. That looks fantastic. Let's go ahead and get this part fully stuck down, and then we'll place this into its spot. So we definitely want to get this little relief cut fully pushed down. That way, as we turn this and things, it's not moving it right there, because that's going to cause you to get a little finger right there that's not going to want to stay stuck down. Especially if we have to go back with it that way, you want that adjustment to be not on the very corner, but just in a tiny bit. This little finger coming up right there. Okay, great. Let's see what we can do here now. Something like that. It's looking really good. We've got some tack in there, I believe. So let's just go ahead and push this out and make sure that we've got it all pushed out. Double check everything. There we go. All right, then we can just fold this over like so. It's not running into it right there. You can see on both sides, I did end up with a bigger gap right here. So there could be an adjustment made to this that would make that fit better. Also, maybe they want this gap to stay wider, and I did get closer right here, which would make a difference, but not that much difference. Anyway, so, you know, there could be some fine tuning to this kit that would help it fit even better. But I'd say this is pretty adequate. All right, so I'm just getting some tack solution in these edges here, and then let's go ahead and push these all down again. So I'm just tucking all this in. So we're going down over the edge, and then some of this is hanging over the edge a bit, and then we can tuck it around this corner. Okay. That looks really good. So we've got a little finger coming up right here, so I'm gonna go ahead and get some tack on that guy, get him pushed down again, and then we're just gonna go ahead and dry him out now because it keeps popping up in that area, so drying that out will definitely help with that. Great, let's get this car back down. And actually, before we do that, let's work with this edge here and get this all hit with some good tack solution, because it's just popping up and we don't want it doing that when we go to set this next piece into place. Oops, that's too high. All right, let's try that again. I'm just holding that down a little bit further. We don't want to leave a big gap on this edge. And it's not big, it's just there. So, but the less, the better. So right like that looks nice. That also ensures that we're not bumping into the back right there. Okay, fantastic. Now let's get this car down. All right, we'll go ahead and get this lifted back up. It's not pre-tacking at all, which is great. And then we need to stretch that to here. But what I want to do is get some of this pushed down a little bit first so we get ourselves a new stretch line. All right, now that that's had just a moment to kind of set up, we got some new batteries. We'll go ahead and put a stretch on this. It's important that we get this whole corner down again so that we don't run into those issues I was talking about with the other relief cut down there, because we don't want to pull on this and move this whole section forward. Otherwise we're going to create a little finger right here, and that'll be a problem we don't want to mess with. So it's just best to get this corner stuck down and then do any stretching that's necessary. And I'm going to go ahead now. Well, actually, I'm going to get my tools back on my pouch here, get them off the camera so we don't shake you around a whole bunch. And we're going to go ahead and put a little tack in that very edge, and let's stretch this into place. So that looks really good. I'm going to go ahead and put my finger right in that corner and make sure that I didn't push that up over the top there. And by holding that down with my finger right there, we've got that locked into place. And I can go ahead and kind of squeegee away from that area. Okay, great. Now let's go ahead and push all this out. Okay, now you can see kind of what's happened here with that tugging on it is that it's created a little finger right here, but that's super manageable because it's not on the very corner. So let's get that top part pushed out. Great. And then let's go ahead and make sure we're good across this curve, and then we'll bring this down. So we got that edge pushed down real nicely and then brought it down. Great. We can go ahead now and just clean this part. Great, let's go ahead and get some mist in there and get started on this part of the install. I don't know about you guys, but I always enjoy when things go blank. It's like, oh, there's nothing left on that piece. Great. That means I'm getting somewhere. All right, so we'll go ahead and set this into place. And then we're gonna go ahead and pretty much start in the center here. And this side is lining up really good. That side is bumping. So we will see, or it's overlapping. So we'll see what we can do about that. That's a solid overlap though. I don't know, it might be the easiest just to trim that nice and straight and then stretch it into place. Yeah, I mean, this side, let me see. So we're right about here. Look at this piece is still popping up a little. Even after we put tack solution in that edge, it's still coming up. Okay, so that really lines up with this here. And this one is definitely over by that amount. So this one is pushed too far, pulled too far this way. So it might be nice to actually install this piece first and then use this to bump into it. I would definitely do that. If I was to do this bumper again, I would put this piece in first, because this, you know where it's lined up because all of these connectors here, as well as you know that this is going to go right to the edge of this thing in back in there. And then you bump this piece into it. So definitely put this piece in first. Okay, so we're nice and bumped up. We're a little bit too tight there, going over just a little bit. Okay, that looks really good now. Okay, and we're just making sure this front is lining up nicely and not overhanging. And we don't really want to stretch any that way, we just want to do placement, because we want all of these things to line up correctly, and if we stretch, they're going to start not lining up As it is, we're getting to that side of those a little bit too much. Okay. So I'm gonna switch over to this black squeegee now, so I can get some more pressure on this and make sure that I'm getting everything pushed out. Okay, and like I said, we are getting a little far that direction. I can tell by looking around those things. I could barely see any of that, but it's just starting to be too much to get to one side of that. And let's get just a little bit, sneak a little tack in here. See how that works. I'm throwing just a little bit of extra material this way, just to make sure that we don't get an issue with bumping into those too much. Because the further out of alignment that gets, the worse it's just going to continue to get. These parts are just like very pesky and time consuming. I mean, they're very intricate. Okay, so before we get too far over here, I'm gonna go ahead and go grab the scissors, which I actually have a pair with me here. And we're gonna cut a bit of this off. We're gonna try and stay really straight here. Which I did, like, not a great job, but pretty good. I mean, good enough it's gonna look great, but it could have been a little straighter, which would have been then easier. Okay, so let's get this bumped into place, and then we'll push everything out over here. So I'm just pushing that into it, this other piece here a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and squeegee that out. And we can go ahead and work our finger across it a little and make sure we're not overlapping, which we are a little bit, so I'm gonna have to lift this back up. We don't want to be overlapping. I'm just kind of massaging that material back down by running over it with my finger. Let's go ahead and massage this one down a little bit before we squeegee all the tack solution out. Okay, we got the edge down really good now. I'm gonna go ahead and massage this down just a little bit more, and I can actually put my fingernail in it right here where it's sticking over just a little bit and pull back on it, and that will even help release and move the material that way just a little bit. Perfect. Okay, that is gonna be a great seam there. Okay, and then let's go ahead and squeegee this part out. So we'll take some of this out the front, and we move the whole piece forward, which isn't what we wanted. So let's get just a little bit of tack in there. Okay, that looks really good now, and I'm gonna go ahead and go across the middle here, and then we can take this stuff forward, and since we have some tack in there, it should stay in place. Okay, I think we did a pretty good job there. I'll go ahead and try out this back edge and up against these supports here. Try out this front edge a little bit as well. Just happens to be hanging over just the tiniest bit right here. And that happens to be the only spot it's overhanging just a little bit. And just a tiny bit. Okay, great. That looks really good. Let me grab that flashlight. Little finger coming up here. Go ahead and run over that with my finger and hold that down. Okay, little finger there. Little one there. One coming out the front here. This one has a little bit, it's bumping into this center support a little bit. I'll actually put a little bit more tack in there and run my finger right down next to that support and push it back. Okay, and I'm gonna put some tack in all of these. So actually, most of them are kind of hitting on this side. So that would lead me to believe that we have the pattern a little bit shifted this direction, and that might be why this slide lined up so well. So it could definitely be beneficial to put this middle piece in first, which I don't think would be normal. I don't think that would be the normal way to install things. Gotta be careful here. I'm sliding over the material with this here, and I'm bunching up this edge and rolling it up a little bit, and that can introduce, unfortunately this is a microfiber, so you don't really get the fibers stuck underneath there, which is great, but you could. And if you had any dust in this or dirt, you could definitely get that stuck in there. It's not a good plan at all to be hitting that edge, the adhesive side, with something like this, because you can get anything stuck in that edge and it's not going to want to stick. So let's get that cleaned out really well. I'm just rubbing my finger, kind of trying to pinch the material and rub my finger on that edge to break anything loose that might have gotten stuck in there. Okay, and then let's go ahead and squeegee that out. And then we can go ahead and wipe over it real gently and slowly and get rid of that moisture out of that edge. Okay. All right, I'll start doing a little bit more of this. So it's kind of going in and wrapping. Some of it is wrapping underneath. Some of it just ends right here on the face. I mean, this stuff, you know, you can get some of this stuff to go down, but it's definitely going to take some heat to really get this stuff to stick down, or you're going to need it to completely dry out. And so, you know, some of that we can't take care of right now. It's just too much water in all of this, and we're going to put a bunch more on here. So this is just going to have to sit for a bit. Yeah, it just keeps coming back up. All right, so we're not going to spend too much time on this right now. Some of this is going down, so it's good to go over it, you know, at least one time, see what sticks and what doesn't stick, and then we'll be back later to take care of the rest that doesn't stick. All right, so I did dry out a lot of this, and I've just been going around continuously touching up the edges, pushing them down again. At this point, I'm gonna say goodbye and say thank you guys for taking a look at this video. But terrific, well, I appreciate you guys watching this video. If you found anything helpful, please give a thumbs up. That really helps the channel. Subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.